Aloha, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Faith and Family First. I'm your host, Eva Andrade, and I'm here with Marcus Oshiro today, and we are going to talk about something that's probably going to bore you to pieces. Nah, it won't bore you to pieces, but I'm sure that you care about the state budget. You care about the decisions that are made in rolling the money in and out. So stay tuned in. We're going to chat about that. Marcus, welcome to the show again.
Good to be here.
Good to see you across the table.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to tap into your old days of when you used to wear your hat of being finance chair in the House.
Right.
And this time of the legislative session, when everybody and their grandmother is showing up at the legislature begging for money.
Yes.
The legislature is not only trying to answer these requests for funding, but they're also trying to take the money that's already in the pot and trying to make sure that it's dispersed. We're in an interesting time.
We are.
Because across the nation, you've got a federal government that is asking the question, name 5 things you did last week.
Right.
And so people across the board are looking at ways to save money, to invest properly and all of that. So we are going to be talking about the very boring but important subject of the state budget. So I'm going to turn it over to you so you can kind of lead the discussion.
Okay. Let me give you the big picture. Okay, so the bill that we're looking at is House Bill 300. This is the budget bill that provides biennium 2-year spending for the state of Hawaii. It starts on July 1, 2025 and goes through June 30th, 2027. So 2 years. And it's about $20 billion each year. $20 billion this fiscal year, $20 billion next fiscal year. About half of it is general funds. And general funds are basically tax dollars, tax revenues raised from local people here in Hawaii. So that's like a general excise tax. That's like a personal income tax, insurance premium tax. Other fees and reimbursements. So that's about $10 million.
And sales tax for tourists.
Yeah. So what they pay at ABC or CVS or a restaurant, that's part of the general excise tax, GET, that goes into that pot. It comprises just about 45% of the overall tax receipts. We get about 35% from personal income tax, and then the insurance premium tax is about maybe 10 to 15%. I'm just kind of rounding it around there. But that's basically the sources of our revenue. The city and county of Honolulu and county governments get most of their revenues not from taxation like GET or personal income. They get most of their revenues from real property taxes. That's why it's very important, the city and county of Honolulu, Kauai, Maui, Hawaii Island. They're always looking at property taxes. And of course, they also have a TAT component that they're using right now to raise additional monies to stay on the island. But so House Bill 300, $20 billion, $10 billion general funds, it funds everything.
It's a very large bill. So if somebody wants to go look at it, it's like hundreds of pages long. There's a lot of line item. Even for people like us that are, I'm way down on the list than you, but I mean, if I'm trying to make heads or tails of the budget, I have a hard time.
Yeah.
So
what you should do is go back to what the governor proposed, what the governor asked for back in December. So I would direct them to go to the Budget and Finance website and scroll through the Budget and Finance website, and it talks about budget. And there's a document called Budget in Brief. And in the Budget in Brief, you have a narrative of a governor request for the budget, giving you some background on the budget setup, the economic conditions, what there were considerations, and the key funding appropriation request that the governor has made. And then this year, we know it's going to be housing, right? It's going to be homelessness. It's going to be healthcare infrastructure. So that's what he's asking for additional monies there this year, on top of the existing budgets and existing monies already what I call fixed into the budget. And that's an important point, Eva. Almost 90% of the budget is what I call fixed or recurring expenditures year in, year out. Doesn't matter if you're a D or an R, year in, year out. And those are fixed costs, like debt service, like your mortgage payments, right?
So when you say fixed, you mean fixed in the subject, but not the amount? So the amount is finagled during session, or no? Is it
The amount can be finagled, but it's very small space to move on it because those are recurring costs. We have a general idea of the expenditures. So like debt service is fixed in there. You have insurance premiums for your workers. You have pension payments for your retirees. You have healthcare services. It's kind of built in right now. You have Medicaid, Medicare dollars already built in. So there's a lot of money that's fixed in there. So discretionary funding in the overall budget is rather small.
So what happens when you have people ask, and I get asked this question all the time, Planned Parenthood is paid through Medicaid. So that means that people in Hawaii, they are putting money into the state that goes to Planned Parenthood. So how do people, if they're angry about that or any kind of costs like that, what would be the process to ask the question, to get the discussion flowing? Or is it possible?
It's possible, but let me go back one step before that, just so we all know that Hawaii is a net gain state. When I say net gain, 1.4 million of us, in whatever form or fashion, we pay federal taxes. We get more money in Hawaii than we put out. So
we start from there. That's how we start. We always start from
always start from there. So we take from bigger states like California, Washington, Illinois, Florida, North Carolina, bigger states with bigger populations, bigger pots of money. We take from them. So we get more money from federal government than we chip in. So
the question is why? So there are people listening going, why is that? Why?
Well, because we have very good congressional representation. There's a sense of equality application on all these federal programs. That's kind of fixed in, but that's just the nature of the beast. Per capita, we get more money.
Well, things like military spending. I mean, that's just one of many.
Oh, yeah. And the military spending is actually something that we get that other states don't get because we have such a prominent feature in our local economy, right? It's military expenditures, services, personnel. You have tourism as another aspect of it. You have some agriculture. And then the big one is tourism, right? Those are the basic stools of our economic, triangle here.
Right now, and we want people to stay tuned for the next show because we're going to talk about how the cry for tourism and bringing people in could potentially be budget increase for people based on spending. So we'll talk about how they got to fill in the pukas. So stay plugged in for our next show, people, because we're going to be talking about that. So yes, go.
Okay, let me get back to the questions you raised. I'm sorry I went all around.
No, that's good.
But again, so people don't want a certain expenditure or do want a certain expenditure of monies. That's when they have the opportunity to come to the legislature directly through the committees hearing the bills and or their own individual senator or a representative who represents them. Call them up, say, hey, I think we need to put more money in eradicating the coconut rhinoceros beetle, okay? Or, dealing with the fruit fly out there, hitting the papayas, right? That's where I want to spend the money. Oh, I don't want to spend any more money on Planned Parenthood and the types of services that they provide because I don't believe in those services and I don't believe that we should be using tax dollars for those services.
I love that you're talking about that because I have in my hot little hands right here Planned Parenthood's testimony on HB 300 in the last hearing. And basically they're asking, and I'm quoting directly from their March 18th, 2025 testimony that says, and I'm quoting, to maintain patients' access to safety net family planning services, we request the 2025-2027 operating budget general funds include $3 billion in sustainability funding to Planned Parenthood and 4.4. So it's not an or. It's an and.
Okay.
4.4 million to backfill Title IX should the Trump administration re-implement the domestic gag rule of 7.4 total over the biennium.
So they're asking for $7.4 million over the next 2 years.
In addition to the 3 million.
Okay,
That's already included in the HB 300 budget.
Okay. Well, interestingly, I was watching a tape from the Senate Ways and Means decision making on House Bill 300. And I believe in the Senate bill that's coming off, going back to the House, in House Bill 300, I think they appropriated $1.7 million each fiscal year for Planned Parenthood or reproductive services or STD, diagnosis and treatment. Right. So it's 1.7. So nothing near that amount of money.
Now it is interesting because, and I had to call you on this because, and this is the thing, the budget seems so complicated for the normal person, which is I think why a lot of people don't pay attention to the budget, which is important why we're talking about it, Marcus, so that you can help us understand why we have to. Yeah. But when I pulled the Department of Health's operating budget and I went directly to their website to pull this, they do have on their report here on page 918, they have a footnote and they're saying, and I'm quoting directly, add 3 million for fiscal year 26 and fiscal year 27 for contract services for reproductive health and planning services. So the 3 million is included in the Department of Health's operating budget.
Yeah, and they're a not-for-profit, freestanding, non-government organization that's entitled to use their rights and come and petition their government for what they think is a good expenditure of public monies. Likewise, those who oppose that, like yourself or this organization, they can come in and weigh against that. And that's also one of those sheets you'll find in the budget and brief. It's a very easy to understand, easy to use document that gives you the overview of those additional requests or highlighting requests from the administration, from Governor Josh Green's administration. It's very clear. And you look at that in the Department of Health, there may be like a dozen or so items there listed in footnotes there. The reason why that's important is this is major adjustments in the executive budget requests. Everything else, like I said earlier, 85-90% of the budget is already fixed, is recurring. It's always standard obligations right at the top. These are additional requests for personnel, for monies to enhance programs, expand programs, or even make new programs. So that's what this is stated right there clearly.
And we're not talking about anything crazy, even on the federal level right now. And I think that's why Planned Parenthood submitted their testimony, because Trump has already said that he wants to cut funding to Planned Parenthood.
Well, they're doing their job because today is April 1st, I think, right?
Yes.
I think yesterday was the March 31st. I think March 31st there was a directive or some kind of memorandum coming out of the Trump's administration that did, I believe, cut $35 million from Title X funding, which would affect these programs here in Hawaii Department of Health.
Which is important that we're having this discussion, because this is why things get crazy during the budget, because you're affected not only locally, right? So if there's a hurricane or fire or whatever, then people are going to be requesting money. So you've got local things that you need to deal with. Then you have things like what's happening on the federal government starts taking away money. I mean, you've got organizations, for instance, like Catholic Charities, who when they submitted their testimony, because there's a lot of organizations, as you well know, Marcus, that submits testimony in support of what they're asking for financially. And for them, it's clear that because they're trying to deal with, these core homeless services, they are asking for a certain amount of money because, again, on the federal level, there's been some cuts, things like USAID and all of this. And so all of these budget requests, local ones, have probably gone up, right, in their requests.
Yeah, I think the requests coming into the grant and aid program that the House and Senate will have to wrestle with at some point in time within the next month before they close the budget. That's one of the final items to settled in the budget between the House and Senate members will be the amount of money they're going to allocate to grant and aid programs. These are grant requests coming in from all the various not-for-profits. Many of them are doing great work. I mean, all of them have a purpose and place in our community. They're non-government entities asking for money to provide services that government doesn't provide or doesn't provide enough or well enough. And so there's merits to these requests coming in. And that's the hard part that the legislature will have to deal with. How much do you give, and whether you give this year or next year, or you gave last year
Right.
and this year. Grant and aid programs were not intended to be recurring kinds of expenditures, but really seed capital to start off a new non-government program in the private sector, not-for-profit sector. So that's the whole idea of it. But there's going to be a lot of changes coming down because I know that Chairman Yamashita from the House Finance Committee tried to put away something like $200 million in the rainy day fund just as a contingency should the federal cuts, roll out the way that they think it may roll out on all these different, programs the state has to take care of.
Well, you brought up something that in a sense, it's almost inside baseball, but it's not really inside baseball because people know about it, especially people that have been around the block. But this grant and aid, it becomes very political behind the scenes when it comes to the funding of grant and aids. Like people ask, why is this organization not opposing this other bad bill that's happening? Gambling, for instance. And it is very possible, right, that some of these groups are not vocal in opposition because it could affect their grant.
Yeah, let's say that I ran a not-for-profit and I provide counseling services. Actually, I provide services to help those who are affected by gambling addictions, right? So I run like a program, like Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous. I have a program, Gambling Anonymous, right? And, I need to have this program because there's so many addicted gamblers out here in Hawaii doing illegal gambling. So
Did you hear that somewhere? It sounds like we might have heard that somewhere.
I think I heard it some public testimony at the Senate hearing or something. But anyway, that goes on every day, every weekend, especially during fantasy month.
On your phone.
On your
You're
phone,
doing
too.
it right now, Marcus.
But there could be a group out there that's providing these services, and ironically, they would support the budget because they would be getting some money to fund their program and provide the services for those who need it, even for like gambling services, treatment services. So inadvertently, they might be swept up into supporting proposals to legalize gambling with the belief that they'll create additional monies to fund the programs to service those who are addicted to gambling. It's kind of circular and ironic.
Which is exactly why we're having this discussion about the budget, because you've got, like you said, you've got legislators right now that are trying to make heads or tails of the money coming in and out, right? So you've got your fixed money, you've got the money the new monies that are being requested, a lot of things like, should we get raises or not get raises? But that means that somewhere behind the scenes, the leaders are saying, how can we bring in more income to the state?
Yeah, that's been the perennial responsibility of every single legislature, as far as I know. How do you expand the economy? How do you diversify the economy? Tourism, military, agriculture. You know what I mean? Those are always going around. So now it's something, okay, maybe we're going to look at gambling, legalizing gambling in Hawaii, something that's never been done in the state of Hawaii. As far as I remember, every single Democrat governor, including Republican governor like Linda Lingle, also opposed gambling. It was a non-starter for these men and women who led our state as governors.
Which is interesting, and we're going to talk more about that in the next show. But it's interesting because you would think that'd be easy money, right? I need an extra $15 million, and if we legalize gambling, easy $15 million. If we believe people like DraftKings.
Well, if you believe people like DraftKings or Bet, or FanDuel or whatever, $10-15 million for Hawaii, just on
easy peasy,
but great cost, great expense.
No, if they're saying there's no, this is that we're fear mongering.
It's a whole thing about corporatization, right? You're going to keep inside the profits. You're going to share with the community around you all the costs.
Right.
That's what it always does, and I cannot I can't understand how anyone would say, let's go and promote more alcohol sales because there's more revenue. Let's go and promote more tobacco sales because there's more revenue. I mean, it's the same idea. Let's go create another vice that we know is going to be addictive, that needs to work on an addictive model to make business sense. You know, you can't go and, give 95 cents on a dollar for prizes and winners if you don't exploit the 5% profit that you're going to hold on to, right?
Well, and I will tell you, an issue that we should care about as people of faith, right, are taking care of the least among us. And I know that whenever you use those kind of terminology, some people start thinking you're going into the social justice warrior stuff and you're freaking out. No. But, you've got churches outside of the Catholic Church that are now rising to do this. I'm First Assembly of God on Red Hill. They did the igloo homes, right? Because they saw that there was a need to do this. Another request for budget, since we're talking about budget, and you're very familiar with this, is the Cow Holly homes. We've got the executive chambers. This is the statewide office on homelessness and housing services. They're asking for $33 million they had $33 million in fiscal year 25. They're asking $50 million.
Yeah, I think that's one of the hallmarks of Governor Green's good requests for additional monies. It's $50 million for Cow Hollies. And he's banking his reputation on addressing the problem with homelessness on the Cow Holly model,
Now, just in case somebody's listening and doesn't know what a Cow Holly is, what is that?
It's a village where people who are needing shelter and medical care and sociological care can get it in a safe environment that's low to get in, a lot of support to stay in those facilities.
And you know what's really cool about this? A lot of the churches have partnered with the state on these Cow Holly homes. And so what they've done is they've offered the wraparound services, right? Things like childcare or maybe counseling if they're suffering from addiction. Oh, are we talking about addiction again? That just keeps coming back up, Marcus. They're going to be busy.
It's part of the human condition, unfortunately.
Yes. So let's go back to the budget. So what is the process right now? So it was a House bill. The Senate now they're working on their things.
Okay, so the Senate just approved it the other day. It's going to be voted on by the entire Senate. It's going to go back to the House, and then it's going to go into what we call a conference committee. And conference committees is basically describing what happens when you have to reconcile two different viewpoints, two different drafts of a same bill, House and Senate. They enter into a conference. And it's only the members of the House and Senate assigned to the conference who have any speaking ability in a public setting. They will be negotiating. A lot of the negotiations, fine-tuning, occurs outside of that in private offices and hallways. But the public decision-making has to occur in public in these posted, noticed hearings.
So if you had a call to action for people right now, what would that call to action be?
I would say look at the comparison sheets that come in from the departments on the expenditures, which ones they like, which ones they don't like.
So if they didn't like the Planned Parenthood?
Then they need to contact the legislators, House and Senate members, and voice that opinion right now. Don't wait up for another day. Now is the time to go and speak your mind and let your manao be heard at this point in time.
And is that both the House and Senate member?
That's correct, because both sides will have to vote on the budget in a final form sometime in late April.
So if you go to hawaiifamilyforum.org and go to our Action Center, you can send an email. You don't even have to know who your senator or representative is. Our system does that for you. You type in your name, address, it'll tell you who your senator. You can send them a message if this is something that you care about. And I do encourage people to try and make heads or tails of the budget.
I think they should. It's not that difficult. Go back to the Budget and Finance website, Budget in Brief. You'll see all the worksheets. You'll see the add-ons for the departments. And they're clearly set forward. If you have any questions, call your legislators.
At the very least, Marcus, and we've talked about this at several shows now, at the very least, they could look at the committee report. Right?
Yeah.
The committee report is a summary, and it shows a lot of the line item things. Again, you can find it on the Capitol website. We can help you with that. We can. Marcus and I are willing to come to your church and actually walk you through the process, and in a way that makes a big difference, so that we people of faith can raise our voice.
And you can also remind me after the session to get the budget worksheets and actually explain the budget worksheets to your viewers and listeners on how important that is to understand the base budget and the appropriations that were made. I think there's still working papers as the legislature's in session, so that's not for public viewing.
Right.
But once the bill is decked and finalized, those working papers, the worksheets, really reveal where the money is going to and how much money is going to be spent.
Well, speaking of money, if you happen to be wondering how you can donate to HawaiiFamilyForum.org, I've had a couple of requests. You can go to HawaiiFamilyForum.org and right there you can click to donate. But what we're really looking for is we're looking for people in the community that are willing to partner with us to continue this show. Because sooner or later, we're going to have to make some financial decisions about this show. So if you think this show is beneficial, then we need partners like you to help us support the show. We also want to be able to start paying our wonderful staff, our producer behind the scenes who laughs at us sometimes. She sometimes dies of boredom and puts her head on the table and wonders why these two old people are talking about this boring stuff that we're talking about. But we need you to partner with us to keep the show on the road. Where are we at on our timing? Okay, so we're starting to go down. So Marcus, in this last few minutes, give that last encouragement for people to stay plugged in.
Well, I think the people need to understand that House Bill 300 is the budget bill, and the budget bill that's going to affect every single man, woman, and child, whether it's education in your schools, university, community college, whether it's your health center on the neighbor islands. It affects you. It's going to affect your condition of your roads and highways. It affects you. Traveling in and out of airport, it affects you. It affects so many different things that you never really appreciate until, you really need it. So pay attention to what's in the budget, what the requests are, and also look at the different forms of bills going through that will either increase revenue and increase taxes or fees and how that might affect you. And then call your legislators, House and Senate members, voicing your opinion. It's important. We have a government of the people, by the people, for the people, only because you participate. And that's part of your responsibility. Thank you.
And I have a little pro tip for you, too. If you're going to contact your senator or representative about the budget, it might be a good idea if you've actually looked at it first, because they want to hear if there's something in the bill you might like. And I think that you'll build relationship if you're able to say, what I like about the budget is these things, but here's how we could improve it. Or here's what I don't like. I think that makes a big difference. So make sure you like this video, share, subscribe, hit that notification button so you know every time we upload a new video. And Marcus and I will be continuing our discussion for the next show about gambling and how it affects the budget. Or does it? Stay tuned and let's find out. Mahalo, everybody.